this is just 10 by 14 by 3.5. That's a pretty standard size.
Is that right? Wow, it's so much bigger than I somehow expected.
Adobe bricks can be pretty big.
No, she said this is too much.
Oh,
This
it's
is,
too wet?
yeah, this is, yes, okay, so this would be a more insulating, less mass, and ours over there is slightly more mass.
Okay, but this is the all straw and clay slip one. We were trying to figure out when to stop adding clay slip.
Oh yeah, this is plenty of clay slip.
Is it too much?
And it tells me too that we could have clay slip that's even thinner, way more watery
So would you
to
add
make it
water?
work. In a wet pour Adobe, all you would need to do is pour it in and screed off the top, and that's all you do. You don't tamp it because it's so wet. It's just like pouring it in. But when we make something like this, we do definitely press it in and form it because you don't want those air pockets.
Okay.
You want it to all be consistent.
I see, okay.
and
But you're
held
not trying to
together.
compress it, are you?
It depends what you're doing with it. But in this block, I would say we probably want to tamp it pretty well. The same with straw clay.
Tamp it or with our hands?
With your hands probably be fine. Yeah. So it's great that we all took different approaches, and we have a lot of different styles of Adobe blocks here. We have some that are heavier on the straw. One here in the middle that's almost all clay, little bit of straw, and I believe no sand. Is that right? On this middle one here,
There's no sand here. We've got aggregate in.
is it tan breeze?
It's all tan breeze.
Okay, so that'll work great. So tan breeze with just a tiny bit of straw, and then we have some real wet mixes, and then that tan breeze and this middle one here, that got placed like you might place a drier Adobe floor. These are more of a poured Adobe, except they're very heavy on the straw, heavier than some Adobe blocks that are the true poured Adobe. But what I see here is a great variation in insulation and mass. So you have that really nice variety. One thing you want to remember is that if you go to do stuff like this, always keep track of your recipes. So we were mixing for fun. We let this first batch, we let you just kind of play and mix and not measure. But as we get later in the day, we want to have you start to really make sure that you're measuring, keeping track of what you did when we mix cob and things like that. And then we can compare how it feels, and then you know how much to adjust, and then you keep that recipe, post it at the job site, and have things follow that way. When you do testing, I like to write right on my block or my plaster sample what my ratio is. So I'd scratch it right into these. If possible, some of the wetter ones you absolutely can't do that. But make sure you put it right with the block. Don't have a piece of paper that flies away that you never see again. This is something you definitely always want to do. Test your blocks, keep your ratios, and then beat them up after. Really put them through the rigorous testing of, cracking them, scratching them, and see how hard they are. Drive your truck up on, on a block, things like that. Just really test them, depending on your application. Now, we've been talking about an interior infill application where she doesn't need a block that's very heavy necessarily, unless she wants a really good mass wall, and she doesn't need to have one that's very strong in compression. So she doesn't have to be probably quite as rigorous, and she can choose a medium mix in terms of strength. But if you're going to be doing any kind of load-bearing wall, you want to make sure you do a lot of good testing. So we're going to let these dry. I hear that Mark's going to be using these later.
Yep.
All right.
I want everybody's name in case. Someone.
Use a variety like that? A different variety?
Yeah, they're all the same size. So the other thing I want to point out is when you don't fill it all the way, you have an inconsistency that when you go to build a wall with it, you got to make up for that in mortar. And so it's better if you get into block production to make sure that everything is as consistent and as filled to the top of the form as you possibly can do.
Should we make that one a little bigger then?
Maybe for Mark's sake, yeah. Yeah, if he's really going to use these, I think these three are probably going to be fine.
So they should really be flush then with this wood. to
Yep.
keep it consistent.
Yeah, because think of laying them up with mortar, and that's, otherwise your coursing will get off.
But there will still be air in between them. I mean, because that's not the
It'll be mortar that makes up all the irregularities. Now remember when we talked about compressed earth block, those come out of the press pretty darn consistent, and that's why you can use a slip mortar because they're so consistent. These are always going to be more inconsistent, so you got to fill that space with mortar to make up that.